Jarvis, drop my needle.
Welcome to the Agents of Fandom podcast, where we podcast not with fear, but with respect. I'm your host, TJ Zwarich, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Garrett. Garrett, how's it going, buddy?
Oh, it's good. Good to be here, guys. I'm recording this week from out of town, so I had a long day today, real tired, and I got a real echoey apartment, so I'm going to keep my stuff down to hopefully a minimum, but it's good to be back.
Hey, well, we are happy to have you regardless. And we have a special guest today. We are joined by Jason Inman, who is the host of the Geek History Lesson podcast, as well as the creator of the Super Best Friend comic book. Jason, how's it going, my friend?
It's going wonderful. And I also want to give a mad shout out to your producer, Ruben, for his colorful background that nobody else, I think, will be able to see as they're watching this video, but it's lovely.
It is very lovely. So shout out Ruben. Ruben, we don't shout out Ruben enough because he created our awesome intro. He gets all of our graphics going. He makes all the clips from our interviews and stuff like that. Ruben is an absolute wizard, and we would be nowhere without him.
That is very true. I second that.
So before we get into our Book of Boba Fett breakdown, before we talk MCU news, Jason, I want to talk a little bit about your comic book.
Nice.
It's coming out in February, I believe. Can you give us a little breakdown about what's coming?
So Super Best Friend is a 44-page comic book. This is the second issue that I've brought to Kickstarter after successfully double funding the first issue last year. And Super Best Friend is basically my love letter to superheroes. It stars Maddie Moore, who loves superheroes, who live streams his best friend, Captain Terrific, who is the world's greatest superhero in this universe. And Maddie has to enter the world of villains and superheroes to fix his friendship with his best friend because, during one of his live streams, he accidentally revealed the secret identity of his best friend. And so this is the second issue. It's going to hit Kickstarter on February 1st at superbestfriendcomic.com. And it's going to encounter Maddie trying to survive attacks from cybernetic clones, electric doppelgangers, and even army tanks. It's full of Silver Age energy. It's a zany journey, because Maddie's going to climb the ladder of destiny to make the transition from sidekick to superhero. It's basically a fun examination of fandom and superheroes. And I'm happy to say, not only do we have art by George Camadize, who's drawing Buckhead for Boom Comics right now, and he was just announced on John Carter of Mars, but Super Best Friend, every time I bring out a new issue, I always think about how can I make the fun? How can I increase the fun? Issue 1, we had a foil cover. This issue, I reached out to the man that got me to read Superman comic books, Mr. Dan Jurgens, a creator on Death of Superman, creator of Booster Gold. And I said, hey, Dan, would you do a Booster Gold cover for Super Best Friend? And he said, yes. So Super Best Friend issue 2 has a variant cover from Mr. Dan Jurgens himself. So if you're a Dan Jurgens fan, stop on by.
That's actually super exciting. That's super cool.
That is very, very cool. And I can't wait to check out this comic when it comes out. And this isn't your first foray into superhero stuff. You host a podcast as well.
Yeah, for the last 8 years, shockingly, I've hosted a podcast called Geek History Lesson with Ashley Victoria Robinson, where basically the pitch of the podcast is, in a little bit less than an hour, we'll tell you everything you need to know about one character, one team, or one book. And we've covered a lot of characters. We've covered Peter Parker. We've covered Wolverine, Fantastic Four. I know I'm weirdly saying the only Marvel characters. I don't know why, but we covered both sides and independent stuff. But just recently we had best Wolverine stories with the writer of Wolverine, Ben Percy. And that's a fascinating discussion. So I love to educate with my fandom, which is something I do with the comic books and stuff like that. It's like on every Kickstarter campaign I ever do, I always offer a script review because I know there are people out there that want to write a TV pilot or write a comic book. script, and I'm always happy to help them with that. So I try to help them do that. So basically the whole podcast is about that too. It's about, hey, you want to know about Moon Knight, which we have an episode coming about soon. We're going to tell you everything you knew about Moon Knight in case you're very curious about what comic books you should check out with that.
Check, added to my podcast list in my Apple and my Spotify.
Well, that's it. I'm out, everybody. Thank you for watching.
Mission success.
And I'm happy you brought up TV writing and TV scripts as well, because you have some experience in TV too, don't you?
Yeah, I've actually, my day job is I've worked for CBS television studios for the last, it's going to be 4 years in May. And I've worked on 5 different television dramas, all hour long. One that was called The Code. It came out in 2019. One that is a very famous sci-fi franchise on Paramount Plus, which I cannot name, or else the lawyers will come out with me. And 2 other shows that I don't know if will ever see the light of day. But I've basically spent the last 4 years of my life in writers' rooms and working in television because I love collaboration. I love shooting ideas in the walls and seeing what sticks. It's probably a natural extension of my own personal fandom, and like what you guys do with the podcast here, and why I love comic book podcasting is because I love those conversations where you're always like, who's going to win in a fight, Iron Man or Batman? And to me, a television writer's room is the day job extension of that very conversation. It's just a bunch of nerds, except we're talking about very specific characters.
You're going to have to check out the draft we had from our last pod with Charles Holm from the Ringerverse. We drafted non-MCU movie characters to basically go in a battle royale fight against each other. So we each made a team of 4. Mine was Silver Surfer, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, Wolverine, as well as, who's my 4th one?
Can't remember.
Oh, and Blade. Oh, yeah, and so we all drafted 4 people to go against each other. So we'll have to, I'll tag you that on Twitter so you can tell us who had the best team.
Yeah, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, I think would go pretty far in that battle. But let me ask you this: did anybody?
I had Andrew.
You had Andrew. Oh, see, I think Tobey could take him. That's what I'm just going to throw that out there. But did anybody put in the dark horse of Fantastic Four, Doctor Doom?
No, we were going strictly heroes, anti-heroes.
Okay,
like,
All right,
Silver Surfer was like the Silver Surfer and Jean Grey Phoenix were like as
I was like, that guy fought,
that
guy fought the Silver Surfer to a standstill. So I think he's in contention if you ever do a villains version.
We're going to be doing, I think we're going to have to do some type of villains draft soon, because we've only really been diving into the hero aspect.
Yep.
And I think it'd be fun to dive into the darker side as well.
If anybody puts in Galactus as the Cloud, they automatically lose.
Hopefully we will see a better Galactus in the MCU going forward. And so before we tap into our MCU news, some programming reminders. Check out that draft we had last week with Charles Holm of the Ringerverse. It was so much fun. Just yesterday, actually, I had an interview with Cranston Johnson, who plays Zumbado of Naomi. I'm really enjoying watching Naomi so far. It's a really great show. And we got to talk to him about his experience working on that show, working on Atlanta with Donald Glover, working with Tyler Perry in the past, now working with Ava DuVernay and a bunch of other stuff. And so that's a really great interview. Make sure you check that out. Now, we got some Marvel news. It's been a quiet couple weeks for Marvel news, just like it is in Marvel TV right now. But we've been getting hit with some Spider-Man stuff. We're getting hit with all the behind the scenes photos. The official stills of all 3 Spider-Man from Spider-Man No Way Home are finally getting posted. And there was an interesting one. There was a concept art photo of Mysterio fighting Doctor Strange that was potentially being in consideration to be used in the movie. Jason, what do you think about that maybe being included? Would you have rather seen Mysterio?
I'm going to say that I don't think I needed Mysterio in that movie, because Mysterio, if you put Mysterio in that movie, wouldn't it feel out of place if Michael Keaton Vulture wasn't also in that movie? And to me, I think that's probably the reason they didn't go for that. I bet you there were early conversations where Michael Keaton and Jake Gyllenhaal were both in this movie, and then they decided no, let's just keep it as the old school villains. I mean, I feel like we just had a movie with Mysterio, so I feel he was unnecessary in this one.
I think that makes complete sense too. I'm a big Mysterio fan, but I think he would have felt a bit out of place there. And my problem with the concept art is like, what the heck is Mysterio going to do against Doctor Strange? Unless this was some,
he doesn't have powers, right?
Yeah, like unless this is some variant Mysterio that was like full out blasted with powers. But yeah, I'm not sure what he was going to do against Doctor Strange. So I'm kind of happy they kept that out of there. And before we talk more Spider-Man, there's been all kinds of crazy Doctor Strange rumors. And I don't really want to even touch too much on them because I don't want to help turn this into a Spider-Man No Way Home situation where we already know everything going in. I know a lot of our viewers are trying to avoid spoilers. Jason, what do you think about what we've seen in terms of all these leaks for Doctor Strange so far? Where does this movie rank on your anticipation of 2022?
Well, I'll tell you what, this movie has been high on my Marvel list even before Spider-Man No Way Home. Doctor Strange 1 is one of my favorite Marvel movies. Nonstop. It is one of the most complete arcs, and it gets outside of the MCU origin problem where they basically just recreate Iron Man 1 over and over and over again. So I love Doctor Strange 1. So I've been very excited for this movie. The rumors are crazy. There are some pictures I have seen, I will not repeat what they are, that I think if people believe that person is in the movie, I have a beachfront property in Arizona to sell you.
I know exactly which one you're talking about.
Oh, yeah, I think you do. I think I saw this one, I think on Instagram, and I was like, there is no way that person is in this movie. But I will tell you this, I'm excited for it because there is, like I said, a multiverse of possibilities, right? With this movie, Benedict was one of my favorite parts of Spider-Man No Way Home. He was like very confident, very older Doctor Strange. I really enjoyed that. I will say this, because of some of the people, well, I guess you just said their names, because we know Toby was in Spider-Man No Way Home. I'm very confident that he's in Doctor Strange 2. And the reason is this, because his Spider-Man director is directing Doctor Strange 2. I think Sam Raimi has convinced his old pal Toby, the Prince of New England from the Cider House Rules, to put on the spider suit again and hop into his movie. I mean, what do you guys think? I think of all the other crazy rumors, I think about 50-50, but I think Toby is 100% in that movie.
Garrett, what do you think? Are we seeing him?
I think as far as the myriad of names I've heard, that makes a lot more sense and is one of the most possible, I think. So yeah, I think there's a good possibility, and I'd be happy for that because I enjoyed what I saw at No Way Home, and I don't know. There was a leak I saw, the other day, and I don't know how much validity there is to it. Not about Doctor Strange, but about Marvel doing a full movie with all three Spider-Men. And, I don't necessarily want that. I don't think we need that. I think what they touched upon was good, but I'd love to see more of them individually and more of their stories. And so, yeah, if we get to see Toby in Multiverse of Madness, I'll be very happy.
And yeah, that's something that we've talked about a lot in this past. One of our former guests, TJ Stukes, said that he had heard from a Marvel insider that we are going to see 20 plus, over 20 different cameos, new appearances, stuff like that. So
that's
I think Toby would make almost too many, right?
Too many.
Another thing we joked about.
What is Doctor Strange going to do in this movie? He's got to move aside for all the cameos. You know what I'm saying?
He's got to put the pieces back together after other people are messing things up. But what's funny is that, we joked about this in the past, that it seems that he's taking the Michael Scott, Kevin Feige might be taking the Michael Scott method of rumors and just screw it. Some true things are out there. I am saying everything. Crazy things, true things, some things sort of true, something sort of not true, and just getting everybody off the scent. Believe what you want, believe what you don't want, and we're just going to saturate the market with all kinds of rumors, and you're going to see what happens when it comes.
That's not a bad strategy, actually, in terms of publicity. I will tell you this. You said a statement very early on where you said that a lot of Spider-Man No Way Home, because there was this anticipation, for me anyways, was very spoiled. I think the last trailer for the movie, I basically felt like I knew what the 3 acts of the movie exactly were going to be. And I kind of knew where Toby and Andrew were going to show up. It was pretty obvious. For Doctor Strange 2, the trailer they put at No Way Home is the only trailer I'm going to watch for this movie. Because if they are going bonkers with this movie, even more so than Spider-Man No Way Home, I truly want to be surprised, because I still have a lot of ill will towards Marvel for revealing that Hulk was in Thor Ragnarok. I wish I had been surprised with that, because the minute he gets on Sakaar and they're all like, I think he's called like the Green Champion or something like that.
Yeah.
Immediately you knew it was Hulk. Whereas if you just showed a picture in the trailer of Hulk on Asgard, you wouldn't put it together. Like, you might put it together, but if you saw the arena, you might be like, oh, I don't know who's going to come through that door. And then when Hulk comes through that door, you're like, oh, duh, I'm dumb.
Yeah.
But with the trailer, it's completely obvious. So for Doctor Strange, I'm really hoping that if it is this bonanza of guest stars, that I truly get to be surprised with it. Because we all knew Andrew and Toby were in Spider-Man No Way Home. It was pretty obvious.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think we're going to have a lot more shrouded in mystery for this one, and I certainly hope so. Another rumor that's going out, bringing us back to Spider-Man, is that Miles Morales could be making his return to the MCU. Sorry, not his return, his debut in the MCU sooner rather than later. And because it's potentially spoilery into how he might be doing it, I don't want to dive into that. But I want to ask the two of you, not super in detail, but if you were to pitch a Spider-Man trilogy, how the next 3 movies should look, what does that look like to you? And so to give the two of you some chance to think of this, I'll start with mine. Just general ideas for each of the movies. I think it would make sense for his next, this is something we've talked about on the pod, and what reminded me of it again is former guest of our pod, Jenna Anderson from comicbook.com, recently wrote an article about this, but how it makes sense for Peter's next love interest to be Felicia Hardy, the Black Cat. And I think that would make so much sense for the 4th movie, and have Peter starting in college, maybe doing some photography stuff, trying to make some money, and have his next romance be with the Black Cat, because she always sort of liked Spider-Man a little bit more than Peter anyways. Peter's always been too cavalier with his identity, and now we have a fresh slate, and it's time for some Black Cat action. And so I would like the movie to essentially be, he starts by hunting her, and ends with them being partners and potentially best and potentially buddies. That, I think it could tie in with Kraven the Hunter being the villain for that one. I think he would be the one going after them, and it would end up being them teaming up to fight him. Number 2, we got some black suit Spidey, the symbiote. We saw that post-credit scene. We saw a little bit of the Venom symbiote stay in the movie, in the MCU. I would love to see some proper Tom Holland black suit Spidey. And then finally, in the 3rd one, I think that's where we get Miles Morales becoming Spider-Man and Tom doing some mentoring of him. Jason, what do you think?
Oh boy. I'm just going to flat out say everybody that top of your head pitching is always hard. So please be kind. Okay. So for me, if I got to pitch a Spider-Man trilogy, I'm going to want to do something different than what we've seen before, because we have a lot of Spider-Man movies. We have 9 Spider-Man movies at this point. Is it 12? How many is that? I don't know. It's 3.
It's 8 live action plus Spider-Verse.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm one of the believers that Spider-Verse is the best Spider-Man movie. So I'm surprised they haven't introduced Miles at this point. So Miles is coming right out the gate in movie 1 with Tom Holland. If we're making these the Tom Holland college years. And I'm going to introduce 3 characters. Miles is going to be in this movie. It's going to be called Spider-Man. The Prowler is going to be a villain. I like your idea of Black Cat, so I'm going to steal that. And then we're going to introduce a supporting character that will become a villain later. I'm going to introduce Mr. Negative, because I think Peter needs a mentor character in this trilogy, and we're going to keep Mr. Negative as the character he's going to go bad later. So that's movie 1. We set up Miles.
Before you go 2, I want to stop you.
Sure.
Have you played the Spider-Man game, like PlayStation Spider-Man game?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I feel like we're all getting on the same page here for potentially following from that.
Yeah.
Mr. Negative could keep up with Feast, where May was working. That could make so much sense.
That could be Peter's job.
There. Exactly. Now, when we introduce Miles, is he just Miles Morales, or is he going to be Spider-Man in movie 1? That my thought was Miles Morales in movie 1, but not Spider-Man until movie 3.
I think the climax of movie 1 is Miles, and the reason, and he puts on a suit. Maybe he wears Peter's original suit, and then by the after credit scene, he gets the full suit. Because to me, if I'm going to make this trilogy different, the way I'm going to make this trilogy different is that this is Tom training a protege, just like Tony did for him. So I want to see 3 movies of that. And then by the 3rd movie, this is Tom Holland's goodbye to the MCU, because the baton is being handed off to Miles. So having a duo, a Batman and Robin Spider-Man aspect, to me makes this trilogy interesting. So movie 2, I know they're going to do Venom. I don't want to do Venom. I just throw him. That was my least favorite after credit scene. I really, just to go crazy, my movie 2 would be the Clone Saga. I would have a bunch of Tom Hollands all over the place, just like the Ultimate Spider-Man things. We have crazy Scorpion, Tom Holland, all these other different versions of Tom Holland, and Miles has to fight all these guys and try to be like, well, I don't know which one's the real one. And because of all the complications with that, by the time we get to the 3rd movie, this explains the reason why Tom is like, well, these clones ruined my life. I think I'm out. I think I'm just going to go unmind wipe MJ and be done. And the villain for the 3rd movie, I don't know, Kingpin. Let's just go Kingpin. I don't know.
Looks like you stole Garrett's idea.
I was so close to it not being taken.
Honestly, Kingpin was my either Kingpin or Kraven for that first one with the black cat. Would have been my choice.
I'm surprised they haven't done Kraven already, to be honest with you. It's a good choice.
Yeah.
So
and I think you go, Garrett.
My first one's pretty similar to yours, but I want to insert Hammerhead.
You say Hammerhead?
Yeah.
I want that dynamic with the Black Cat, because I enjoyed that from like the DLC of the PlayStation game.
I could see that too.
Yeah, so then I'm going to introduce Miles in the 2nd one with Prowler, and then Fisk is going to be like my ultimate big bad in that one. And then for my 3rd, is it weird to do a Sinister Six now that we've had like a 5-villain team up in No Way Home?
Not if Kingpin's the lead behind them, I think. Can
I bounce on top of that?
Of course,
I don't think it's weird if you make Michael Keaton the person that leads that Sinister Six. So he comes back to finish off Tom Holland's journey.
I like that. I
want
Scorpion. Scorpion in it.
Michael Keaton is sort of the Doc Ock, the leader of the Sinister Six, and it's Kingpin who assembled them to take down Spider-Man.
Yes. Like, because, complete that. It's interesting, right? That we all sort of like came up with versions of, well, by movie 3, Tom Holland is going to go off into the sunset, basically. And if you think about it, like, I like that, an idea of Sinister Six or Kingpin, some massive event. I mean, I chose the Clone Saga. We all chose like an event that would make Peter basically say, I think I'm done.
It's time to,
What would be really, and so I think the Clone Saga has either potential to be amazing or potential to be messy.
That's why it's so exciting.
But what I love about your pitch, Jason, is the potential for after Tom Holland Spider-Man rides off in the sunset and Miles has his solo movie in the future, for potential of a blonde-haired Tom Holland being Ben Reilly, rolling in that Scarlet Spider suit in the MCU 8, 10 years, 15 years from now.
Yeah. Or you could do like a version of, they did this with Miles in the comics recently, where they gave Miles a Clone Saga. You could have it be both. Maybe it's not even Tom. Maybe all the clones are Miles. Maybe you flip the dynamic. All the clones are Miles clones, and Peter has to spend the whole movie being like, whoa, I disagree. Why are you acting so crazy? He keeps changing, and that would allow you to have evil Miles in the future.
Wow.
And I think one thing that we absolutely all can agree on is somewhere in these next 3 movies, we need to be getting the Prowler. Donald Glover cannot be a small cameo from Spider-Man Homecoming talking about his nephew. Like, we need to be getting the Prowler in these next 3 movies.
I've said it once and I'll say it a million times. If you have Donald Glover, use Donald Glover. Simple as that.
Especially because Donald Glover himself is a huge fan of Miles Morales' Spider-Man. So like, use that, tap in, please. We love him. He loves it. Let's get him in here.
It's very similar to the current debate, right, with Idris Elba Bond, that at this point, we've talked about Idris Elba being Bond so long, just make him Bond for God's sake. And it's the same thing with Donald Glover. You're like, you have teased this for a long time. Just put him in the damn movie for God's sake somewhere.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I feel you 100%. And so that'll do it from now for the MCU news. But before we exit out of the Marvel, this will really only be for our YouTube videos who are watching it. But Jason, have you ever cosplayed Doctor Strange before? When we were talking Doctor Strange and you were talking about Benedict Cumberbatch, I'm looking at you and just thinking, there's a resemblance there. This guy could be a little Doctor Strange.
I have not, but fun fact, it is a recurring gag on my podcast, Geek History Lesson, because when we did our Doctor Strange episode, it was before the first movie. And I figured Benedict Cumberbatch is from the United Kingdom, that Doctor Strange would just be British. So I did a Doctor Strange impression, which I made him very British and very bouffant, and he was very loud. And then the movie trailer came out, and he was a New Yorker. But it is sort of being a recurring gag that British Doctor Strange keeps showing up on our show and keeps being a guest, even though he's not British. So we've always had the gag on our show that if we were to ever do like a concert tour of our podcast, that I would at the first showing come out in a full Doctor Strange outfit as Doctor Strange, who is trying to take over our show.
Oh,
but I appreciate that, that you think I look like Doctor Strange. He's a good looking man.
I can see it. After you said that.
So
that is awesome. And so it's time to exit the MCU and bring us into the DCEU. And let's talk some Peacemaker, because I wrote a review for Chatterbox Film. Peacemaker's not out in the UK yet. And so Chatterbox Film wasn't able to get a review out on it. And so I did a guest one for that site, and I reviewed the first 3 episodes. And I talked about how I really, really liked the first 3 episodes. And my least favorite part was Vigilante. And so shout out to Garrett, because Garrett said from the get-go, this is a great character. He's a lot of fun. You're missing it. And I was, because episode 4, Vigilante was my favorite part. That prison scene where he just is kicking all of the White Dragon's thugs' butts after talking about African-American music and rock and roll and contributions to music and rock and roll. It was hilarious. And so Garrett, kudos to you. You were right. I was wrong.
Yeah, I'm so happy to hear that, because after we recorded that podcast, I talked to my girlfriend Nina about it, and we were like, I can't believe they felt that way. We really like that dude. He's like such a homie. He's so obviously what Peacemaker wants and is looking for, and he's right in front of him, and he just can't see it. And then I have your tweet notifications on. So like anytime you tweet something, I like it immediately, because that's, we're homies. I got to do that. And I see that you commented on someone's post saying like, oh my gosh, he is so good in this episode. I loved him so much. And I'm like, wait, him and Ethan just blasted me on our last episode for liking him. So I DM'd him real quick in the tweet, and I'm like, oh yeah, is this true? So this feels really good to hear. So thank you for admitting that.
No problem. It's deserved. Jason, what did you think of the first 4 episodes of Peacemaker so far?
It's so funny. I think the 4th episode is the best episode so far. I will say that Peacemaker to me has gotten better and better. When I saw the pilot, I was a little worried because nothing really happens in the pilot. It's sort of like the after credit scene of the Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
And then the more and more we meet the outside characters, the more interesting it becomes. Freddie Stroma, I'm with Garrett, from episode 1 was just fantastic. And also, he's British. Speaking of British, that is a dialect that he is doing, and I think it's an excellent dialect. So I'm really enjoying it. And I kind of do think, I kind of hope we get a Vigilante spinoff, because I think he's so good. I actually like him more than Peacemaker.
I like him so much.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
And so I like him so much more. And because to me, what the part that I didn't like about him was just like, not him as a character. There were just some times that I felt like his comedy was being overdone. It was just dragging on a little bit too long.
Okay.
And I just changed my mind because I didn't feel that way at all in the 4th episode. And I can't wait to see where he goes from here.
Yeah, it was so sad when Hardcore picks him up from the jail and he just like starts crying. He's like, I think I made it worse. I'm like, oh, this guy is like such a good dude. Like, I feel so bad for him.
Well, and I'm really curious to get into Robert Patrick's backstory, Peacemaker's dad, because if you guys have never read the original Peacemaker comic books, I'm going to highly recommend that you don't, because that is from the original comic books. Peacemaker's dad is a flat out Nazi supremacist who basically trained Peacemaker to be a Nazi supremacist. So
wow.
I'm very curious about where they're going to go with his dad. And I'm really happy that James Gunn took this from the original Charleston Peacemaker comic books.
Very cool. And so maybe that'll be something I'll take a peek at, but not until after I'm done watching Peacemaker.
Yeah. I might spoil some stuff. I wouldn't, but I highly recommend you don't read those comic books. They're terrible.
Yeah, I hate that my first thought when I saw his like the suit reveal for the White Dragon, I was like, that is sick. And then I was like, wait, stop. This guy like sucks.
Conflicting feelings.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why it felt so good to see Vigilante kick all of his friends' asses.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so now that we've recommended something you don't read in terms of the Peacemaker comics, I want to recommend something you should watch. Tuesday night, episode 3 of Naomi premiered on the CW, and this show is a lot of fun. So I know a lot of our listeners are younger. I'm a teacher, and some of my students are listeners, and I really want to recommend the show Naomi because it's fantastic. We talk in this show so much about representation, and this show is knocking it out of the park. It has some classic, CW growing pain things, but the main character, Casey Wallfall, just does she's an amazing actress. She does an amazing job. We had an Agents of Fandom exclusive interview 2 days ago with Cranston Johnson, who plays Zumbado, the main antagonist from the show Naomi. Definitely check this show out because it is a lot of fun.
Yeah, it looks really good.
That was a great interview, dude.
Thank you so much. I had a blast doing it, and maybe one of the coolest moments so far is when I tweeted about the interview, Ava DuVernay, creator of the show, and just like renowned director,
Oscar winner,
Oscar winner, superstar, like
just incredible person.
She liked the tweet, and so like that was like a big fanboy moment for me.
Yeah, I literally stopped. You sent that to me, and I stopped working for a little bit because I was like, oh. But yeah, that was exciting to see. And so check out the show Naomi. Check out that interview. We keep the interview spoiler free, so you can check it out before you watch the show. It's on our Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can get it on YouTube, anywhere you get your podcasts. Check out the Agents of Fandom, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. It's all over there. We've been tweeting out of the Agents of Fandom stuff out of the Fandom Wire Twitter lately, but like we've been talking about, we're cooking up some stuff lately. There's going to be a separate Agents of Fandom Twitter coming soon, and we got big things coming we are excited to talk to you about. All right, spoilers coming for the Book of Boba Fett. If you have not seen it yet, press pause on the pod, and you're going to want to watch this one before you listen to this. And it is a great episode, so it's time for us to review the latest episode of The Mandalorian. I know the Book of Boba Fett.
Well, you said full spoilers. I couldn't believe they killed Boba Fett in the 5th episode of the Book of Boba Fett. It was I was blown away that Boba Fett literally blew up in the first 5 minutes. Couldn't believe it.
It was
And
wild.
so, Jason, before we get into our thoughts on this episode, what have you thought on the series as a whole so far?
I've actually really liked it. I see that a lot of the discourse online are people thinking that it is boring and slow. And my argument to them would be that Mandalorian season 1 is also very slow. But to me, I like that Jon Favreau has taken this character that is the representation of the gunslinger, the ultimate badass in the Star Wars universe, and decided to tell us an intriguing story about trauma. And I love it. I think it's amazing. And it's the perfect character to tell that story with, because again, it is that stigma in society of like, well, you don't know, tough men don't have mental problems, and we don't cry, and we don't miss our dad every time he flies away from Camino. Screw you. And you're like, no, we do. We miss people. Everybody feels this way. So to tell this story through Boba Fett, I've liked the flashbacks better than the main story. But I think this first season is better than the Mandalorian first season. But we're going to get into this. I think this episode was a problem. Even though I really enjoyed it, I think it's a problem for Boba Fett. And I'll just park that there and we can come back to it later.
And so that is something I wanted to touch on, that just because I think that the best episode of Book of Boba Fett didn't have Boba Fett in it, that does not mean that I haven't loved the series so far, because it's exactly like you said. I think people are forgetting, because of the high points we've gotten in The Mandalorian, that a lot of the episodes weren't that. It was setting up the character, getting to know him, getting to know Grogu. And we forgot, and I think people forget about that a lot. And so
I know a lot of people forget about the episode where they're just stuck in the ice with the spiders. Remember that one?
Yeah,
Yes.
I don't like spiders either, so that wasn't my favorite.
Well, sorry, I just thought about it for a second and I just dozed off. Sorry.
And so I do think people forget about that, and I want to shout out Bryce Dallas Howard, because she directed this episode and it was absolutely amazing. And I think it's time we start mentioning Bryce Dallas Howard along with Filoni and Favreau in terms of people we want to see attached to Star Wars projects in the future, because she does a phenomenal job every time she is attached.
I agree.
And so for me, this was the best episode yet. What do you guys think? Garrett, was this number one for you?
I think it was the fastest, most up-paced episode yet. I think we got a lot of prologue for season 3 of The Mandalorian. And I don't know, like Jason said, there's been some incredible storytelling throughout this show, just called the Book of Boba Fett. So it seems like very weird to have a complete episode where there's zero Boba Fett in the entire episode at all. So I don't know if I can say it's the best episode of the Book of Boba Fett if it doesn't have Boba Fett in it, for me personally. But it was an amazing episode. I was smiling from ear to ear watching it. Super exciting. Bryce Dallas Howard did an incredible job.
I was gonna add to that. Like, my favorite episode of Boba Fett so far, I think, is episode 3, and that's the episode where he becomes the full Tusken.
Yeah, I enjoyed that.
That whole sequence, I think, was just genius. That was also the one that had the street gangs in it. And I remember the internet broke apart on that. And I just want to say, hey, internet, have you ever seen a movie called American Graffiti, written and directed by George Lucas, the creator of Star Wars? No? Then shut your damn mouth until you do. This episode, I think, very, very, as you were saying, it probably is the best episode of this entire series. But it's because it's standing on 2 seasons of The Mandalorian. And it just goes to show you how much of an excellent job Jon Favreau has done for 2 seasons, making us love the character of The Mandalorian. We said this off mic very briefly. To me, this is episode 3.1 of The Mandalorian. This is not an episode of Boba Fett. And my only hope for this, because this is going to be weird if The Mandalorian is only in one more episode. If The Mandalorian is in the rest of the season. Like if he's in the next 3-4 more episodes and the ending of Boba Fett sets up something new that we don't know for Mandalorian season 3, then I think I'll have no problem with this episode. But if the Mandalorian is only in like one more episode and then he skedaddles, this is going to be a weird detour for Boba Fett, I think. What do you guys feel?
I agree with you, but I also do think we are getting more. And even if it's,
I hope so.
My little dog Obi-Wan here always makes a little cameo every time we start talking about Star Wars. He always comes over to me. Yeah. And so I do think that we're going to get more. And I think we have to start thinking of this less as isolated episodes and more of a connected universe, which obviously, yes, Star Wars is a connected universe. But with these Disney Plus series that we're seeing, it's Mando. Now it led us directly into Book of Boba Fett. We're getting Ahsoka. We're getting Obi-Wan. All of them aren't going to be at the exact same time periods, but I think we're going to see a lot more interconnectivity because who's running this? It's Jon Favreau. And where is Jon Favreau most recently coming from? The MCU. And it makes a lot of sense that that's what he's trying to do, replicate that success. And I think we have to start looking at it in that lens. And I'm really excited to see with what type of other connections are going to be coming.
And on that note, it's a lot easier for that continuity and to place those details when you're not making these trilogies 20, years apart from each other.
Well, it's also interesting. TJ, you said a very interesting point. Because this is a streaming service, it is the rules of storytelling can kind of be thrown away. And they are kind of just assuming, for good or for ill, that you are basically watching everything on Disney Plus. And that can have some advantages. That can also have some disadvantages. So yeah, we could all be like, well, this is not an episode of Boba Fett and da-da-da-da-da-da. But you're like, well, no, it was, because it had the title screen and it'll probably pay off in some other way. This also makes me think that Boba Fett might be in The Mandalorian season 3 again. Like that these shows, and maybe all the Star Wars shows, except for maybe Obi-Wan Kenobi, that's like parked in a different time period, they might cross over more than we ever think. Like, I'm now thinking we might even see Boba Fett and Ahsoka now, and The Mandalorian. Like, these shows might just cross over each other on back and forth, just like the MCU.
And it seems like with this episode of this episode of Book of Boba Fett and the one we got before, they're building a squad. There's a squad coming together for a fight. And I think that's what these Disney Plus series are doing as well, is I don't know what the team is going to be. And I don't know if the team is going to include everyone, but we have Boba Fett and Fennec. We have Mando and Grogu. We have Ahsoka, which is hopefully going to be leading us to Sabine and Ezra from the Rebels series.
And we have a Luke Skywalker out there too. If
you don't
think we're seeing Luke Skywalker again, you're nuts, or you're bonkers. Excuse me.
Maybe we're going to be seeing him in the next episode of Boba Fett.
So real quick.
He's like, hey, I remember you. Get back in that Sarlacc pit.
Yeah.
Real quick, when in this episode, when the pilots, the sheriffs stop Mando in space, one, not the one that we've seen before, but the other pilot, the younger one, apparently was the person who played the version of Luke that they CGI'd to be younger.
Oh,
so he was like the stand-in. Yeah.
Well, because the other pilot was Paul's son, Hyun Lee, who's from Kim's Convenience, who is awesome, and I think should have an action figure.
I would be in for that. He looks cool. He looks like perfect.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that's very interesting. And like on the note of cameos we might see in the future, before we get to Mando going back to get Grogu, he misses him. He had his fight. He's struggling with the Darksaber. He injured himself. He has to go back to the armorer, who he's clearly been back working with and like fighting to be accepted by. He's thankful that they're helping him. He's thankful that they helped him out in the end of Mandalorian season 2. That bond is broken, but before it's broken, he makes a little gift for Grogu. He misses his boy. And I love that.
Yeah, it's adorable. What do we think it is? What do we think like this armor set is? Because it seemed like tinier than
they showed rings.
I
thought it was chainmail. Yeah, I thought it was
chainmail. That's TJ. I texted about that earlier. I think that is gonna look so cool. So cool.
I hope that's what it is, and he didn't just craft him like a little toy of rings.
That would be disappointing.
Well, it's funny. It's interesting, right? Because, you know, the consequences of this episode, and I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, is that, you know, Mando basically did the right thing. Like last season, he took off his helmet, and his own people, the Zealots, as we've heard them called before, reject him. So now he sort of has to go back to this found family that he has created of Boba Fett and Fennec and Grogu and Ahsoka. And it's going to be an interesting lesson that I hope is the purpose of this, is that Boba is going to be, hey, you can't just follow everything 100% of the way, because you have to follow like what is right and what is wrong, because he's doing the same thing, right? He was a bounty hunter, and now he's like, no, I'm going to be a little bit more honorable. I'm not just going to kill everybody. And that, interesting enough, is so Star Wars, it hurts. That is literally the story of Anakin Skywalker. That is literally the story of Luke. And I kind of like that we're just taking this same sort of character story of like, whatever your organization or your group is, you can't follow it 100% of the time if it violates your moral code. And I think that's fascinating. That's why I think the writing is so good.
And I think we saw in this episode too that Din Djarin's moral code doesn't line up with that of the Mandalorian these Mandalorians that he's lined up with. Mm-hmm. And I want to touch on a little bit more. We're going to talk about the Darksaber a lot more, but before we get there, that battle with them, I think, showed how his morals differed. And that fight that we debuted the episode with, it showed his morals as well. Like, yes, he's a bounty hunter. I can bring you in warm. I can bring you in cold. But he gives every person the opportunity to say, I don't want to do this. Just so you know, like, get out of here.
And then he lets the workers go in and take the money after, too.
Yeah,
exactly. He shows time and again that his morals go above his quest for money and anything else, essentially. And that's similar to what we've seen Boba doing as well with his crime lords. So Jason, I think that's a great point. I'm looking forward to that future conversation between them.
It's the classic gunslinger. And that's something that you can tell if you look at a lot of the episodes of Mando season 1 and 2, they're loosely based on 50s and 60s Westerns. And Mando is very much the man with no name. And the man with no name won't just murder anybody. He will give you a chance to walk away. But if you don't walk away, then he will murder you. And I like that they're just making Mando pure gunslinger. And yes, they did the same thing with Boba. It's like one step above just a pure hired killer.
Yeah, I agree completely. And when we see him fighting with the Darksaber, both originally, then they have the conversation about it, and then we see him in the fight with Vizsla there. I'm curious. Do we think Mando is Force sensitive? They've been hinting lots in.
Oh, really?
They've been hinting lots in Star Wars in the new trilogy that they're more Force sensitive people in the galaxy than or maybe originally thought, and it just needs to be tapped into and fostered. He keeps talking about how these feelings that he senses he needs to go back to Grogu. Something could be wrong. I feel like he's going to be Force sensitive, and that's why they're sticking him with the Darksaber, and we're going to be seeing some new. The Jedi Order is clearly, sorry, I'm going on tangent and I'm going on a different way every time I go, but the Jedi Order is clearly going to look different. This is the way.
That is
the Jedi Order is clearly going to look different in the future than it has in the past. In The Last Jedi, Luke talks so much about how the Jedi Order was wrong in all of these ways, and it did fail in so many ways. I say so often in Attack of the Clones, the Jedi are more, and Revenge of the Sith, the Jedi are more at fault for Anakin turning dark than anybody else is. And it's because of how they handled that situation. And I think we're going to see the Jedi Order take a complete different turn in the future. And we see that in Jedi Fallen Order, the game, and Cal Kestis trying to reunite it. which we're going to talk a little bit more about because of a certain BD droid that we saw in this episode. But we see Rey with her orange lightsaber at the end of the trilogy. I think that this is going to go a different turn. It makes sense that Mando would be wanting to go rescue Grogu and get him away from where Luke is right now, because we are probably not that far away from Kylo Ren absolutely destroying all the younglings training with Luke. So I have to regain my train of thought here because I've gone so many different paths. Question 1, do we think Mando could possibly be Force sensitive? Jason, we'll start with you.
That's the first I've ever heard of that theory. I hadn't considered that. I hope not. But the more that you say it, the more I'm like, oh yeah, you might be right. Or is the idea, crazy pitch, is the idea that Grogu as a Mandalorian is the one who's going to end up with the Darksaber, and that's Grogu's lightsaber.
That would be very, very cool.
Because they're going to also have armor eventually. Like, we're going to see Yoda ears outside of a Boba Fett helmet. It's going to happen. Maybe that's where it's going to be. I mean, here's the dark pitch that Star Wars won't do, because they said in this episode several times you had to take the Darksaber by combat. Can you imagine at the end of the series is that Mando sacrifices his life so that Grogu can kill him and become the leader of the Mandalorians?
Oh, don't you even put that in my head right now.
See, I don't think it would go that way.
It's very Western, but it's too dark for Star Wars.
I think it would go directly to he realizes this is the way, their way is not the right way, and he hands it off to the more capable suitor.
I hope so. I mean, it's interesting, man. It's an interesting theory that Mando is Force sensitive. I never considered that. It's very interesting. You're right. They are focusing on the Darksaber quite a bit. But also the Darksaber was almost an entire season-long arc on Star Wars Rebels, which is my favorite Star Wars thing ever.
We're big fans of that here as well.
Yeah. I don't think we're going to see Kylo Ren or anybody else like that. I certainly hope not, because I think the less said about that sequel trilogy, the better. In my mind, it just didn't happen. Star Wars stops at the Mandalorian. That's where I look at it. So,
well, and so while we're talking about Rebels too, that kind of goes on to my point of, no, I don't necessarily think Mando's going to turn into a Jedi, but if he is Force sensitive, and how Force sensitive people and Jedis could look in the future, aside from Luke Skywalker right now, who is probably the most powerful quote unquote Jedi, who is not a Jedi out there, it's Ahsoka right now. And that's going to be interesting to see, of a new set of light or dark saber wielders who are Force sensitive, who aren't necessarily Jedi. And I think that could be, we saw with the same thing with fantastic Star Wars content with Star Wars Visions. They seem to be going in different routes of it. It's not just the same Jedi Order, Sith. There can be more Force users out there following different rules. And I think that could be where they're headed.
There's more shades than just black and white.
Yeah.
I like that.
It's also funny because, like, the way you're saying it too, that you don't think Mando's going to become a Jedi. I just had this vision in my head of going to The Last Jedi, and there's some deleted scene from that movie where Luke is like, well, before Kylo Ren, I was going to pack it in when this Mandalorian showed up and said, hey, Boba Fett can be a Jedi. And I was like, no, that is too far. I am out. Take your clone and get out of here. I'm going to go grow a beard and live on an island and drink some blue milk.
And so we're definitely going to return to Tatooine. But before we return there, I'm getting excited by just the thought of, like, all our Rebels talk with just a team of Mando with the Darksaber, Boba with his guns, Fennec with her guns, Grogu with a little chainmail and his new saber. Oh, it's exciting to think about. But before we return to Tatooine, I want to ask you guys, because obviously we talked about he wants to go back to get Grogu. We've talked about that lots. So I want to ask you guys, do we think we could see Luke next episode, or in one of the episodes in the future when we see Mando going to retrieve Grogu?
I think 100%. To me, seeing Luke Skywalker at the end of season 2 of Mandalorian was a test for future Luke appearances. I actually have a stealth theory that it was a test for a Luke Skywalker television show or a Luke Skywalker movie. I really have no doubt about that in my mind, because just like Paramount is still making Star Trek starring Captain Kirk, I think Disney wants to make Star Wars starring Luke Skywalker. I have no doubt in my mind that we will see Luke Skywalker somewhere in the Star Wars saga again.
Well, we know the actor who was de-aged to CGI him was already in the episode, so I think it's highly possible as well. I think probably the next episode is going to be like half Grogu, Luke, or wherever Grogu is, and then like the other half, the back half, is probably going to be getting back to the Boba.
I don't know.
Story.
I wonder. I kind of think the next episode. I kind of think the Grogu stuff is not going to happen until Mandalorian season 3. I think Boba is going to give him something, or give him a clue, or come across a gangster that knows where Skywalker is. And we're going to watch Mando zoom to his season. That's what I think it's going to be.
See, but he did say at the end, I have to go pick up someone first before I come back and help you.
Oh, interesting.
So I'm kind of under the impression that before he comes back, he's going to already have had to gone and see Grogu. And so I could see potentially us not getting that full journey until Mando season 3.
Crazy.
But I think he's sort of going to have to come back with him, or at least coming back from having tried to see him.
Or this is a misdirection, and the person he's going to get is not Grogu.
And the only other person I accept is Ahsoka.
Yeah. Well,
it could be Bo-Katan. It could be Bo-Katan.
Or Bo-Katan.
There is an interesting theory that it would be interesting if Mandalorian season 3 took place literally in between these two episodes. That would be interesting. But I don't know, man. I think, again, I'm putting my head into the head of Jon Favreau. And if I'm Jon Favreau, I don't think I'm giving you Grogu until Mandalorian.
Yeah,
I'm gonna tease you with it, but I'm not gonna. Or like he'll try to go get that. He'll try to go there, and somebody will get in his way, or a villain will like break his speeder or something like that. I don't know. I think it's a little too soon to see Grogu, but you know what? You might be right.
I agree. I could see it being like, nah, he wasn't ready for me to get him yet, or maybe like I couldn't get there because he wasn't where I thought he was going to be. Yeah. I think it makes a lot of sense to save Grogu, but I think it would be a super fun misdirection if that was our lead to get Bo-Katan or Ahsoka or
Bill Burr. Yeah,
Bill Burr coming to help out. Yeah.
Like I'm saying, there's a lot of other scumbags out there that Mandalorian might go grab.
Cad Bane.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
I want live action Cad Bane so bad. I'm gonna say it every week till that happens.
And so we're back on Tatooine. We're back at the same home world that the entire series has been taking place so far.
You mean where the entire franchise takes place?
Yeah, sorry. Where too much of the franchise takes place.
Who knew this backwater planet that Luke literally tells us in the first Star Wars ever is the most unimportant planet in the entire galaxy is literally where everything happens.
More important than Coruscant.
Yes.
Yeah. And so we get some previous Mandalorian characters that we've known and loved, but we also got a new one. We got a BD droid, and BD1 from Jedi Fallen Order is my favorite droid in all of Star Wars lore, I think, just simply because a lot of other ones are cute and cool, but how many others stab you with a little health pack so that you can continue on your journey every now and then? So I love BD. Jason, have you played that game at all?
I played the first level until I got tired of climbing, but I did like the cinematics.
Yes,
the story is nice.
I watched the cut scenes on YouTube.
Okay, so you're aware of everything. Okay, I got you.
But yeah, that was really cool. I mean, you talk about the video game. I mean, I love the Disney Plus shows giving love to the prequels, because for as flawed as the prequels are, George Lucas was always a better idea man than he was an executor. So the prequels are filled with awesome ideas. And I love that we got to see the Naboo starfighter again. And I kind of love that it's going to be Mando's new ship. I think that's a genius idea. Although, such a tight fit. Like, you're like,
no guests.
Yeah, you're not gonna. There's no hold.
Yeah. You can't freeze your prisoners and like keep them anymore. Yeah.
And so this starfighter we got, was that a starfighter from somewhere we've seen in the past, or just a starfighter from their army?
I'm going to say it's personally Anakin Skywalker's starfighter, just because Mandalorian said wizard. And I think that Anakin scrawled wizard on the dashboard with a Sharpie, and Mando saw it. He was like wizard. Ah, yeah,
Wizard.
that's something that's something a warrior says. Wizard.
So the way she was detailing like how it was personally commissioned from the Queen of Naboo, it really just made me think like they're giving a lot of detail to this, more than they need to. Did this belong to someone? And so that would be super cool if it was Anakin Skywalker's.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're ever going to hint at it, but I sadly hate to say this, but I think the reason why they focused on it so much is because it is their next merchandising avenue, and we're going to be able to purchase this thing in a store next year.
That's why we have
Christmas.
you on here.
By Christmas.
That's why I didn't even consider that, and that logically makes so much sense. So good.
I also think it's.
I needed you to pull my fan theory galaxy brain in back to logic.
Disney loves merchandising. It's the same thing. They haven't made a toy of the BD droid yet, have they?
I don't know.
Well, they will now.
They should.
They will now. I guarantee you they will now.
And so that brings us to another thing, back to with another Jedi Fallen Order game coming out. It was announced a couple days ago. The sequel is going to be coming out. That wasn't our BD1, right? Like that was just a BD droid.
I think it's just a BD.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I thought as well.
Because we saw a protocol droid last week as well. I think it's just one of those.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I thought the same thing.
And there was also one of I think his name K2SO, Alan Tudyk's character from Rogue One. Those type of droids were also seen in the destruction of Mandalore sequence.
Yeah.
So that's also a nice little callback. And one of my favorite things to recall from the prequels from this episode was the like pod racing callback scene where he's flying the ship through Beggar's Canyon. That was really cool. I enjoyed that. That's like one of my favorite memories as a child, is like watching that scene in theaters. So
it wasn't really cool. It wasn't watching the tax laws.
Yeah, it was. Sorry, unfortunately, I was not.
It wasn't playing Star Wars. It wasn't playing Star Wars Episode 1 Pod Racer, which they just up-resed and is actually a really good game from the Nintendo 64.
Great game, but I didn't own a Nintendo 64, so I could only play that if I went to like the one friend's house that owned that game.
You can download it on your PS4 right now.
Oh, I'm going to get an emulator on my computer as soon as I get home.
Well, and you also have a friend with a N64 who you can come visit and we can play.
Yeah, I'll just go to Canada from Southern California real quick. That's just a simple trip.
You're literally doing this in like 5 months. It's fine. You can do it. We'll play then.
Yeah, you're right.
And so the last thing I want to touch on from this episode is, what is our final squad going to look like? We have Boba, we have Fennec, we have Black Chrysanthemum, we have Mando. Who else is joining this team? And we have
the mech people.
We have the mech people. We have our squad. Who else is joining the team to take down the Pikes?
Is the what was the name of the IG droid that Taika voiced in the first season?
IG-11, I think.
Is he still alive?
No, he blew up to save Mando and Grogu. Yeah.
I bet there's another IG. I like IG-12 or something like that.
I'd be in for that.
Also, again, and my encyclopedic knowledge of Star Wars canon has lots of holes. Is Bosk still alive? You know, the dinosaur guy from Empire Strikes Back? Has he been killed in any of the comics or anything like that?
No idea.
I
don't know, but there's been a lot of Trandoshans that we've seen.
I want to throw Bosk in there.
Okay.
Yeah, because they're the same species, right? So like maybe they were like, well, we're gonna update the makeup. I don't know. I hope we get some surprises. I hope we get some really stellar surprises. Like I would love to see Bosk. I would love to see an IG. I would love to see Carl Weathers in this group.
That would be very cool. And the two people I've been saying to Garrett on the pod for a while that I want to see join this squad is Trace and Rafa from the cartoons. I feel like there has to be a reason they introduced them to that last season of Clone Wars to be tight with Ahsoka. They had so much beef with the Pikes. I could see Trace and Rafa joining the squad in live action.
Interesting.
Again, I don't know if the age lines up, but I'm all for it. And I also, they were a massive part of the last season of Clone Wars that we waited, like how long for. So I also was wondering, what's the purpose of these girls? Maybe we'll find out. But if we don't get Cad Bane, I'm gonna cry.
Realistically, I think they shouldn't be that old. They were probably only 16 and 18 in the Clone Wars, something like that.
So they'd be about 40. They'd be 40s in their 40s now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, then I'm down for it. I'm here for it. But if we don't get Cad Bane, then I don't really care.
I'm putting a dark horse choice out here. I want Boba somewhere in the show. I know this won't happen, but this is a throwing out there. I want Boba to get on a hologram and call for the help of Crimson Dawn, and Kira from Solo answers and maybe sends a couple people his way just to get that connection.
Do we think that she might be like a villain at the end of all this?
Oh, 100%.
An ally?
100%. Oh yeah, she's a villain, man.
Behind the Pikes, like she's who's driving the Pikes behind this.
Maybe? I like it. Let's go with it. Let's roll that along.
And so he gives her a call and it does not go his way because she then fills in the Pikes on everything that he has planned.
Or it's the end season. Like he makes the phone call to her after he's killed all the Pikes and he's like, don't you send any more people to my planet? And she's like, look, bitch, I was Khaleesi. You need to settle down, Abin Sur from Green Lantern.
Yeah, and then he says to her, I will do the same thing to you as I did to your boyfriend and stick you in carbonite.
Yikes.
Yeah.
And so that'll do it for our Book of Boba Fett roundup. Before we get out of here, reminder, follow Agents of Fandom on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Follow Fandom Wire on Twitter. Follow myself, TJ_Zwarich5, ZWARYCH 5, as well as Garrett on Twitter, Real Slim Blaney 5. Is it 5 at the end, or is it just Real Slim Blaney? There's no 5. That's me who has a 5.
That's you.
Just Real Slim Blaney. Next week we have a very exciting guest. We have Corbin Shanklin from the Illuminati coming to join us. So we're going to be talking Book of Boba Fett, Peacemaker, MCU, whatever's news going on. Things change so fast in this world. So who knows what we're going to be talking about, but we'll definitely be talking about some Book of Boba Fett. Next week is also going to be when we're giving away our final 2 Amazing Spider-Man variant covers, one with Spider-Gwen, one with the Green Goblin. So remember, the way to get that is you have to go to Apple, leave a 5-star review, and write us a nice little review. It's the easiest giveaway ever. People don't like doing this. And so you're right on there. You got like a 30 to 50% chance, maybe even more than that, to win these really cool comics. So make sure you head over and do that.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't have them with me to show you guys this week, but you remember what they look like. Ruben, I'm going to need you to Photoshop some comics on my hands.
Fantastic. And so before we get out of here, Jason, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a blast. You bring so much knowledge, and I just love your perspective on things. It brings so much knowledge and experience that it drives the conversation. I felt like I didn't even have to look at my notes today because everything just ran so smoothly.
Well, I appreciate that, guys. It was a lot of fun, and I really appreciate you reaching out to me and being like, hey, you want to come? Like, pro tip to anybody with a podcast out there: be like TJ, reach way ahead with your guests and say like, hey, do you want to record in like 2 months? Your guest will probably say yes, because the calendar is clear.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. It's well thought out.
It's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
It's been a long time coming. And yeah, we were happy to finally get it done.
Well, thank you. Guys, it was a blast.
And so make sure you follow Jason. Where can people find you on socials?
You can find me everywhere at Jawin. That's JAWIIN. Geek History Lesson is our podcast if you're interested. But more importantly, superbestfriendcomic.com. It'll be all over my Twitter, Instagram. 48-page superhero adventure. One of the coolest rewards we have is you can get yourself drawn into the issue as a comic book character. So if that sounds cool to you, come check it out at superbestfriendcomic.com. February 1st is when we launch. Then we got 30 days to sweat it out and hopefully made our goal.
Very cool. Very cool. I've always wanted to be in a comic book. So that definitely, that sounds enticing to me. So make sure you check that out. Check out the Agents of Fandom wherever you get your podcasts, or at agentsoffandom.com. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you like the video so you can help us combat the YouTube overlord algorithm that's pushing us down. Help us bring it up. We need the likes. So thank you so much for listening. That'll do it from us today. Peace.
Peace.